therapist and yoga teacher. And one of the questions I get very often is, what do I do about my tight psoas or my tight hip flexors? So in addition to the practice I have online, yoga for tight hip flexors, you can also consider that sometimes a tight muscle is tight because it hasn't been strengthened within the entirety of its range. They are only using a small portion of it on any given day. And so for a hip flexor muscle, the full strengthening motion would be to use it even into a hip extension. And so today I'm going to show you how to do that in an eccentric way or a negative way. And this is going to be a really simple intro to psoas or hip flexor strengthening. Certainly there are many more that you can do, but this will be a start. So you want to have a couple of blocks, 1 or 2 blocks, you might get away with just one, and or a bolster. And we're going to lay on our backs for starters, and we're going to do a little bit of a test first. So have your knees bent, and you're just going to lift and lower a couple of times, noticing if you feel any tightness in this range. Noticing also if you feel your back arching in this range, your low back going into extension. So principle number 1 that we're going to work with today is flattening the back. So if you flatten the back, the more superficial muscles of the abdominal wall anchor the psoas. And so we're going to take one leg in this position. This is called hook lying position. Flatten the back and just lift and lower. Lift and lower. We're going to do about 10 reps here, but at home, please go until you feel fatigued. And if you don't feel fatigued after 20, 25 of these, then we'll go to the next level. So let's call that 10, other side. So you notice that I am keeping my knee bent. So this is a way to just go through a fairly short range of psoas, but one that is really, really useful. So the next thing you can do is you can grab a block. This is a very skinny, small block, and place it under the hips. And if you happen to have 2 blocks, you can, or a thicker block, you can do that as well. So this puts me more pretty close to being in a straight line with my torso and my hips. Not exactly, but pretty close. So the block is right under my sacrum. I'm again working on drawing my lowest ribs to my front hip points, flattening the back. And again, I'm going to lift and lower. So this is probably no challenge to many of you guys. But if it is, keep this up and go to fatigue. Go nice and slow, all the way up and all the way down. You'll know that it's a challenge if you feel your low back arching. You'll know that it's a challenge if you feel lots of wobbles happening. You'll know that it's a challenge if your knee is going on a little wavy route up and down. And so same thing, other side. Lift and lower. Slowly, stabilizing your torso, rising and lowering through the opposite leg, using your hip flexors, the main hip flexor psoas or iliopsoas. So from here, the next step would be to straighten the leg and lift and lower. I'm going to remove one of the blocks, and let's go for it. So now, here, with my leg hovering off the ground pretty substantially, I'm in a straight line from my ankle through my shoulders. If I lower the leg down, now I'm getting into eccentric hip flexion and hip extension. So my thigh is behind the plane of my torso, not by a whole lot. In fact, the skinny blocks are really good for this. So if you have a thicker block, don't be surprised if your heel doesn't come all the way to the ground. Belly in, front hip points up, ribs down, and begin to lift and lower. So if this is a challenge for you, stay in the line of the torso and lift And you don't have to go, by the way, to vertical, because these last few degrees aren't going to give you a whole lot of leverage. So you can pretty much go to about 45 degrees in front of you. Try not to push too hard through the opposite foot, the one that's rooted to the ground. And then if you can add those final degrees of hip extension. Lots of control. Hover, maybe tap your heel. Lots of control. Hover, maybe tap your heel. Go to fatigue at home. We're going to take it to the other side. So hands to your belly so that you can get that feedback about what's going on in your torso. And again, starting from neutral to not quite vertical. Neutral to not quite vertical. Notice if there's a difference one side to the other, and you may spend a little extra time on one side because of that. And then as you're ready, from the line of the torso, lower down, find the heel, maybe tapping to the ground, and then just control those few degrees into hip extension, the first few degrees into hip flexion. Make sure you're breathing, stable through your pelvis, stable through your torso. Beyond these variations, where you're lifting the leg against gravity on the ground, you can also do seated variations, where you lift your leg up here and up here, and you're trying to push down through the opposite sitting bone in order to get that lift. And then of course you can do the same in standing. So that's an intro to strengthening your psoas. And particularly for those of you who've been stretching your hip flexors forever and they still feel tight, try strengthening. I would also highly recommend strengthening the opposite. So for most yogis, we can benefit greatly from strengthening the glutes and the side hips and the inner thighs. Thanks for watching, thanks for playing along, and please write below in the comments what you notice. If you notice a difference right versus left, if one side was harder than the other, if any of those variations surprised you in how challenging it was, or if you have other ideas for standing and sitting variations. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.